Okay, we're going to talk about the shape tool, and it's a little bit different in Illustrator than it is in Photoshop. So I just want to touch on it real quick. In Photoshop, it does create a vector shape that Photoshop then rasterizes when you're done. Um, in Illustrator, it stays vector the whole time because obviously we're working natively with vectors. But if we click on the rectangle tool, about a third of the way down, and I'm going to go to my color panel and just to make sure I have white as my fill color and I have a black stroke. So I'm going to change my fill color. So it's a little different using Illustrator's colors. Remember in Photoshop we call them the foreground color and the background color? Since in Illustrator we're really using shapes, we have a fill color which is the middle color and we have a stroke. So if we click on either one, it kind of comes to the front or to the back. That's how you actually select your color. So let's say I want a fill of this yellow color. Let's choose that color so that we can really see what's going on. Okay, so now I have a fill of yellow and a stroke of black. And you can see that changed down here for me. If you want to do it down in your tools panel, you can do that as well. But I did it up here just so we can see what's going on a little bit more. So I'm going to hide that now. And I have my rectangular tool selected. I'm just going to click and drag out a square. And so this is kind of what we had before with Photoshop. Now if I clicked on my selection tool and click on the square again, I can resize this any shape I want, and there's no detriment if you're working with shapes to change the shape. This is just a mathematical formula of what this shape is. So this file size is going to be really small with vector images if you just use vector images in Illustrator, and it's going to print immaculately no matter if you print big or small. So it's really where Illustrator shines. So if we wanted to, with our selection tool, we kind of can transform it. We can scale it up and down, change the size. If we want to constrain the proportions, we can hit Shift and it will constrain the proportions and size it perfectly for us. If we just need to move it up or down, we can rotate it. If we get close to the little corner controls, you can see our little icon changes to 2 arrows left and right, and as soon as it does that, I can click and drag and rotate it. So it has similar functions to Photoshop with that. What I like using is a little thing that's not in Photoshop. So I'm going to delete this one. With it selected, I'm just going to hit delete. So if you know what size square you want, instead of clicking and dragging it out, if you just click once on your background with that layer, so I'm going to click on the rectangle tool, and if I just click once instead of clicking and dragging, a dialog box pops up that says, how big would you like it? Would you like it 32 points by 275 points? And this dialog box remembers what you did last time. So this is what I drug out last time. And you can tell that because it's a 0.6665 and 0.333. So I didn't draw a perfect square, obviously. But I could say okay, or I could say no, I want this to be 225 by 275, and click OK, and then I'm going to get that perfect size every time. So that little hidden toolbar I actually use a lot. So let's go through a couple of the other tools. I'm going to delete that one. So underneath the rectangle tool, there's a rounded rectangle tool, and you can see that just gives you rounded square or rounded rectangle. You can change the size of the curve and all that stuff just by clicking on the desktop. So not on the desktop, on your document. So instead of actually drawing it and clicking and dragging, if you click once, let's say you want a square that's 200 points by 200 points, and you want 25 point corner radius, which is pretty big. So you'll see it's a much different corner now. So this is a much more rounded corner, where if I clicked again and it didn't drag out and I did 50 points, you can see the corner radius is much bigger in this one. So I really like that that little menu just for that reason. It's kind of silly they put it in that secret menu and they don't put it at the top here for you, just because that's where we're used to, even though there's a couple other things up here. Um, just know that little secret menu exists, and that becomes really important when we start dealing with polygons. So rounded tool, good, but let's go down to our polygon tool, because the circle tools, the ellipse tool is similar. So go down to our polygon tool. Now if I were to click and drag, you can see I get what's kind of like a stop sign, right? Just a polygon tool. If I don't click and drag, if I just click once, I get to choose how many sides I want. And this is important if you want to create a crazy polygon that has 22 sides and is more of a circle. That's great. If you want to create a polygon that has 6 sides, or a polygon that has 4 sides, you can do that. Obviously, 4-sided polygon isn't probably going to be your best option, since you can just draw a square, but there may be instances where you want that, or there may be instances where you don't want a perfect circle, so you can play with that a little bit. The other place I use that little dialog box for is your star tool, which is underneath your polygon tool. And right now, if we just click and drag, you can see we get a pretty nice star. And maybe we don't want a star. Maybe we want a star that has 20 sides. And you can see we get the crazy, like, buy now star, right? Like you see on packaging and stuff like that. So if that's what you're going for, that's great. That's a little hidden menu that lives there. There's a bunch of shapes, and now you have control over these shapes as well. So if you go into your direct select tool, this is a custom shape. So you have all these anchor points. You can see the anchor points of the shape. And if you need to move and change these anchor points around, you have full control over that. So if I were to click and drag, I can actually make this star look like it's more leaning left or right with moving these anchor points around. So really quickly, you can kind of get something going, move these anchor points around, and get something really unique really fast. So play around with the shapes, play around with changing their anchor points or doing interesting stuff to them. I've seen a lot of anchor points, especially like with this star, where they pull out a few of the anchor points, and so it's more like a Christmas star instead of a crazy buy me now star. So stuff like that, you can really start creating really unique items, really unique shapes fairly simply, with Illustrator doing most of the work for you. So it's a pretty cool little deal.